Pawpaws and pineapples have been my most productive fruit. They've used very little water. So I've set aside one vegetable bed to grow some Colombian pawpaws, very sweet tasting. Seed came from Seed Savers. And I'll probably plant some celery stem taro around them, so I do get something out of this bed for a minimum of water. Everything's mulch in the garden. Of course, gardeners are mulching like they've never mulched before. But the important thing is, don't mulch too deeply. This time of year, winter and spring in the subtropics, if we do get showers of rain, they're most likely to be shallow, and if you have too deep a litter of mulch, it won't get through to the soil. Another thing is to try and keep the mulch away from the base of plants, because if we do get wet weather, then the neck of the plant is most likely to be where you'll get fungal decays. So even with things like pawpaws, which don't mind a bit of water, keep the mulch away from the base. And you can see here I've pulled the mulch away from the base of the pawpaws. It's really important to mulch trees and shrubs, but just in case we do get some really wet weather, pull mulch away from the base of the plants because the neck is vulnerable to decay in wet weather. This is one of my main crop tomatoes, a variety called Apollo. I've got 4 plants instead of half a bed this year to conserve water. This is mustard Osaka purple, which is great in stir fries, really hot. And again, I'm growing about half what I would normally hold, but it's valuable leaves. These eggplants are seed from the summer crop that I grew, and they self-sowed themselves in a row, so I'm just growing them through winter. The basil is also self-sown from some plants I grew last summer. Same thing happens with these cherry tomatoes. They very conveniently came up in a row. Instead of trying them on stakes or letting them growing on the ground, I'm growing them up a bamboo fence, which seems to be very simple for them, and it also provides a bit of shelter to the rest of the vegetable bed. This is a shot of arrowroot, which when I initially set up the garden I thought would be sufficient to provide shade and shelter for tender vegetables. This has proven not to be the case in the drought, and so now I'm backing them up with sugarcane. With existing trees, particularly evergreen trees, we're going to have to water very, very carefully. Evergreen trees can lose water, particularly when it's breezy. They've got no defences like deciduous trees that drop their leaves. So look, this avocado has been staked. It's already been loosened by summer storms. I haven't put a stake any higher. This is a half stake, and there's a particular reason for it. A half stake keeps the tree firmly anchored, but it allows the crown to move, and the rocking actually stimulates the roots to form firm anchoring roots, so it actually works with the tree whilst protecting it against winds. So this winter, make sure you water your evergreen trees thoroughly, particularly during windy weather, and make sure you stake any young saplings so they don't get blown down by killer winds. These are my potatoes. It was 3 hours of hot sunny wind, and look, I've pruned them back, they may come through, but this points how little buffer I've got between plants growing and plants wilting. This is how the little enclosures work. You see, I've got the facility to put shade cloth over the top and conserve even more moisture if I need to when things get really windy, but basically it's a buffer. It's a buffer, and it helps me get by on very inadequate watering. This is one of my favourite pumpkins. It's butternut, and I sowed it in summer, and it just keeps on producing. We're on our third crop. 2 plants have produced 17 pumpkins so far, so they're snuggled up in sugarcane until they finish cropping. I didn't get a decent crop from my last lot of sweet potato cuttings, so I've restruck cuttings and put them in styrofoam boxes, which help them root fast, they conserve moisture, and they protect them from heat as well as cool. 30-year-old net curtains that my mum bought in London are just protecting them while they go through that initial difficulty from a freshly inserted cutting to a rooted cutting. I haven't stopped propagating things at all. This is Sabile minor. It's a small palm, very drought tolerant. The seed was sourced locally and I sowed those last spring, and they're just big enough to put into tube stock. And of course tube stock dries out so quickly, I thought the best thing to do is put them in these boxes. Each box has got 8 drainage holes, and it keeps them nice and cool and moist. So just to recap, well, my vegetable garden looks like it's somewhere on the edge of the Sahara Desert. I've used the bales to reduce wind desiccation. I'm mulching, I'm making compost for the summer rains to carry on improving my soil. My trees have been staked and I'm watering them regularly so they don't desiccate or blow down when we get those killer winter winds. I've reduced the amount of vegetables that need lots of moisture to a limited number, but I'm still growing some, and I'm growing a lot of fruit and vegetables that get by with minimal water. I'm putting in the kale and cabbage because you've got to grow winter vegetables and enjoy them fresh from the garden, and this year we've got a particularly important reason. The Murray-Darling river system is close to providing no irrigation at all, and that means we're saying goodbye to 70% of Australia's homegrown fresh fruit and vegetables. Now, more important than ever, make sure you start growing your fruit and veg before the prices hit the roof.